All right. How's everybody doing? Wow, we've got a huge crowd tonight. This is awesome. Well, you guys may not know about me. My name is Amir Carter. I run comms for Diop Harris for Congress, but we are joined with an incredible cast of people. We wanted to put this together to basically kind of showcase that there's more to Michigan than the Senate race and some of the other popular races that are happening right now. We've got a huge cast of progressive candidates right now, all hailing from multiple districts. We've got Kyle Blomquist from Michigan's first. We've got Diop Harris from Michigan's fourth. We got Aisha from Michigan's 11th and Donovan from Michigan's 13th. All here to introduce themselves to all of you. This is for everyone to get acclimated with these incredible, amazing candidates. And it's going to be moderated by Branden Snyder of Working Families Party. And so I'm going to take it off to him so he can introduce himself, and then the candidates will introduce themselves afterwards. Thank you guys for being here. We are very excited to host this, and let's get started.
All right. Thank you, Amir. So again, my name is Branden Snyder. I'm the state director for the Michigan Working Families Party. I'm here today in my volunteer capacity. I'm here not as the state director to kick it with community org leaders in the chat about what's going on outside of the Senate race, but also what's going on outside of Metro Detroit. So we'd love to be able to do a couple of rounds of intros with our fabulous panel. So what I want to do is I want to first pass it to Aisha to introduce herself, and then and then let's talk a little bit about where you are, where you're calling from, and why you're running.
Thank you. Hi, Brandon. Thank you for having me, everybody. I hope you're all well. Thank you for joining. My name is Aisha Faruqi, running for Congress in Michigan's 11th district, which includes the majority of the cities that you know of when you think of Oakland County. And I'm an attorney, a former prosecutor, worked at the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office in the Juvenile Division, where, of course, our focus was on rehabilitation. Worked as a legal aid attorney. I am also a daughter of immigrants. My family and I moved to the US in 1993 after my mother earned a scholarship to study at the University of Detroit Mercy. And my sister and I, we attended Detroit Public Schools. During one semester, we didn't have textbooks. And my teacher, Mr. White, made copies of the lesson plans paying out of his own pocket. And that's something that stayed with me years later. My family and I moved to Farmington Hills, graduated from Farmington High School, go Falcons. Really got to see the socioeconomic disparities between the two cities, and thought that if I'm ever in a position to give back and do something about it, I will. The idea that a child's zip code could determine the quality of their education didn't sit well with me. After graduation from Farmington High School, attended University of Michigan Dearborn, then graduated from University of Detroit Mercy Law School, and decided to go into public service. I was a legal aid attorney. I had my own law firm in Hamtramck, was able to serve a lot of individuals who usually wouldn't have had representation, something that I'm proud of. Stood up for survivors of domestic violence, fought against corrupt landlords, kept our communities safe as a prosecutor while giving young people the second chance that they deserved. With respect to why I am running at this time, there are two reasons. One, as a legal aid attorney, as a prosecutor in the juvenile division, I really saw how broken our system is and who it leaves behind. And heard from clients who were working multiple jobs just to feed their kids and going to bed hungry. Seniors who were rationing medication because they couldn't afford rent or groceries. A good friend of mine told me recently that she doesn't have insurance because her husband has cancer, and it's more important that he's covered so they can pay the $50,000 shots that he needs to survive. And to me, in the richest country in the world, that's unacceptable, which is why I am a supporter of Medicare for all and will fight like hell for it. So watching the affordability crisis really hit our communities was one reason. And the second was watching authoritarianism take root in our nation, watching ICE killing immigrants and American citizens and shooting people in the face and sexually violating children and men and women and becoming this rogue paramilitary force that is um, doing the bidding of the president. And as someone who came to this country as a child, as an immigrant, and saw what it meant to my family and I'm absolutely outraged. And we have a saying in my community that when someone attacks your home, you don't sit back and watch, you stand up and you fight back. And that's why I'm running for the seat. And at present, I am close to Farmington Hills. That's where I'm calling.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Aisha. Kyle, let's bring it up to the UP and tell them who you are and why you're running.
Hell yeah. Well, thanks for everybody for coming. Thanks for the invite. Glad to speak with y'all. My name is Kyle Blomquist. I was born and raised in the Upper Peninsula. I'm from Michigan's first congressional district, which is its largest by a wide margin. It encompasses the entirety of the Upper Peninsula and about the top third of the Lower Peninsula. It's 44% of Michigan's total land mass. And we're the only congressional district that touches more than one Great Lake, and we touch three. Yesterday I was on Lake Michigan. Today I'm on Lake Huron, and by Tuesday I'll be on Lake Superior. It's a lot of drive. It's a lot of distance. It's meeting people exactly where they are. I'm an architect by trade. I own and operate a small firm in my hometown of Iron Mountain over by the Wisconsin border in the Upper Peninsula with my wife, Megan. Her and I met in architecture school 19 years ago, and we've been working together pretty much ever since. We have two kids, identical twin boys. We've experienced, I believe that we are best represented by people who have experienced the economic violence of our system, have seen their rural hospitals close, like I have experienced medical debt. When our boys were born, we ended up in $30,000 worth of medical debt because we had the audacity to have children in this country. As an architect, I see all the things that are broken in our housing policy. The fact that we never address people's basic need for shelter, and instead we have commoditized everything in the system. The entire ecosystem has been poisoned because of that. I look at the lack of opportunities around my district. It's a lot of rural areas where people are depressed. We've seen how small business has been hollowed out, mostly because a group like Walmart or Dollar General come in and just kind of kill all those businesses, not only creating a monopolistic relationship, but a monopsonistic relationship where they become kind of the primary buyer purchaser of labor. And so then they have an outsized influence on the labor market. There's all so many ways that I want to be able to meet my neighbors' needs. And I understand that most people in my district don't conventionally vote the same way that I do, that it's a plus 21 red district until we prove it otherwise, right? But what we've been doing is we told ourselves from the jump that we were going to go to all of those contested areas. We're going to talk to everybody, red, blue, purple, and otherwise. And that's what we've been doing. That's where we've seen the most success because there's a lot of people hurting right now. And I think that the Democratic Party has a tendency to be paternal and patronizing to those people that are hurting. And what I want to be able to do is recognize that anger, righteous anger can be fuel as long as it's channeled correctively. And I want to be able to channel that through a compassionate government. There's so many things that I want to accomplish, but one thing that kind of physically compelled me to run in this race was the genocide in Gaza. I found it completely unacceptable that no candidate, Republican or Democrat, in my race could just simply say that it was a genocide and that we could enforce existing U.S. law to stop funding that and be able to use that as leverage to be able to end this atrocity. And so I find it to be a moral failing on behalf of my Democratic Party counterparts to say that they're ill-equipped to handle any of the other things that we need to do.
All right. Well, thank you so much for running, and thank you so much for representing our friends to the north and the fight for, making sure that we have access to healthcare. Now I want to shift it a little bit over to the west side of the state. Diop, can you tell a little bit about who you are and why you're running?
Absolutely. Thanks, Brandon, for hopping on. Thanks everybody for taking this invite, and thank you for joining this call. My name is Diop Harris. I'm calling you from St. Joe here in the fourth district, right off the coast of Lake Michigan. So our district includes my own hometown of Battle Creek, Kalamazoo, St. Joe and Benton Harbor, and Saugatuck, South Haven, as well as Holland. So we represent a very diverse community. We've got Western Michigan University that's in our district. We've got a city that's 90% Black in Benton Harbor. So we got the blackest city in Michigan. We got the gayest city in Michigan in Saugatuck. We got the Dutchess city in Michigan and Holland. So we've got a very diverse sort of district. But I love it. I was born and raised in Battle Creek. I'm a member of the Nottawassippi here in Band of Potawatomi. So my people have been here since before Michigan was Michigan. And that's where my duty to serve comes from. I was born, in Battle Creek, humble beginnings, loved my hometown, but saw it be, sort of evaporate. We were this great American city, home of Post and Kellogg cereal. We had an identity, and yet we saw families move away, businesses and schools shutter over the Great Recession. But during that time, I felt an immense amount of hope watching, Obama become elected president. I saw somebody that looked like me become leader of the free world, and so I felt, this immense amount of hope. But I knew that wasn't just for me. So I got my career started right away as a freshman in high school and started my work of community organizing, got involved with my community foundation, kept that work into college where I pursued a public policy degree at Michigan State, so I could learn how to leverage federal resources for community benefit. Took that work on to Washington, D.C., where I worked at places like Americans for Financial Reform, where we fought for Main Street consumers in the face of Wall Street wealth extraction, and stars aligning down the road. And I earned an opportunity to be able to work for Senator Sherrod Brown on Capitol Hill. And along the road, I've learned that, we've got people that work really hard for our communities at the ground level in these statewide coalitions. We got folks from West Michigan and Southwest Michigan in those gatherings. But once we get to DC, my experience there is that we've got no one representing us, no one that looks like us, that lives like us, that understands what we're going through. And for a time, I believe, I needed to be a staffer, somebody that was experienced from my hometown, going up to DC, creating policy that way. Well, then you realize if you got your boss is the member of Congress not voting on those initiatives, voting in favor of working families, then what's all that good work for? And so we had an opportunity after the voters sent us home in 2024. I had that opportunity, which was that cold feeling after the election. But I had a moment of coldness, but I realized, our people have been through Andrew Jackson. We've been through much worse. So that led me to step back into the fight, to re-engage, and later down the road to file for office myself, because I understood that working people didn't have an option on the table. In the 4th congressional district, we were getting ready to walk another Democrat off the plank and run this pro-democracy message and really have nothing behind it. Us as Democrats, progressives, whatever we want to call it, we need to have something to vote for, a vision we're fighting for, rather than continuing to vote against stuff. So yeah, we know Bill Heising is bad. He's a Betsy DeVos puppet. We've known that from the get. That's not to be debated. Now, what we need is somebody, and we need a campaign that's going to push a vision of what South Michigan is going to look like after these fools are out of office. Yeah, we're going to support impeachment. Yeah, we're going to ensure that our babies are invested in our money is invested in our babies and not bombs. But what are we going to do to expand regional transit? What are we going to do to repurpose existing infrastructure? And we've got those plans forward, and that's what's that's creating this movement here in Southwest Michigan. And it's, y'all feel it up in the UP, over in the 11th and the 13th as well. And it's this national movement that we're creating locally. So I just want to thank everybody for joining and doing their collective or participating in doing their collective role in all of this. So thank you all.
All right. Thanks so much, Diop, for that. And yeah, just a reminder that this is about a bigger thing than just a particular race, a particular candidate. We're talking about building movement. We're talking about investing and fighting for our communities. So swinging this thing all the way back down to Metro Detroit, we'd love to bring up Donovan McKinney, who is in another fight, a primary fight against a representative on the Democratic side, of which we've been all talking about. Is joined by a guest. Okay.
Yeah, what up, though, everybody? Donovan McKinney, I'm here. We walking, canvassing with Abraham Ayash. He's running for the state senate. We are here right now on the blocks talking to people. Early voting starts this Saturday. So we're trying to get the early vote out. If people got absentee ballots in their hand, we're educating them to make sure they don't mail it in. Instead, fill it out and drop it off at a drop-off location because it's getting so close to the election. And with Trump playing games around the Postal Service, we want to make sure people's ballots actually get to the clerk's office in time. But we're doing GOTV efforts. Again, Donovan McKinney running for Congress in the 13th district. We got to win. I'm going against a dude named Sri Tanadar, who's, man, they bundling APAC money. They bundling freaking crypto money, DTE utility money against us, man. But we're weathering the storm. They're pushing a lot of lies against us. But like our message is simple and clear. This is about working families. At the end of the day, this is the 5th poorest congressional district in the country. We got folks who are working 2-3 jobs, not even making ends meet, let alone scraping by. I got seniors on fixed income. I just talked to one. All she gets is $600 or $900 a month for Social Security. That's all she gets. Her rent is $800. Then her food assistance for the federal government just got cut because of the implementation of HR 1, the one big shitty bill. Republicans call it one big beautiful bill. But her food assistance just got cut by less than $30 a month, when just a year or two ago, it was over $200. Then her out-of-pocket costs for her doctor's visits have skyrocketed, as well as her medication. And so every few days, I'll talk to the senior, and this is not just her, but a lot of people are going through this. They have to make the tough decisions, either to use their little money, scraping pennies together to buy food, or to pay for their rent, utility bills, or whatever it may be, or life-saving medicine to keep on living. And that's not the America any of us want. Instead, we're sending freaking billions of dollars overseas for God knows what, like for ever-ending wars, for bombs and weapons to kill families and children, when we got so many people here struggling at home. And that's the fight of all of this. This is a whole national movement talking about redistribution of resources. And we're tired of the inefficiencies of government. We want to make sure we got the money. We live in the wealthiest, most powerful country in the world. And so you telling me our people, the most vulnerable populations, especially our seniors and children, can't get what they deserve, can't get what everybody needs? I think that's a damn lie. So we got to fight for it. It's up to each and every one of us to make sure we put people in office that are aligned with our values. But more importantly, we can only do this with people like you supporting us. So please get the vote out. We got 12 days, y'all. If you can, I don't know if I can do can I do that? Is this allowed? Can I ask for like donations to all of us? I don't know if that's allowed. If not,
Yes,
that's
it's
fine.
allowed.
There is a
Oh, it is?
there is a donation
Okay.
link that is a
Oh,
Chanting
okay,
donation
okay,
link
cool.
that
Because
you
I
all
don't
have.
know which side. I'll be on too many calls, man. I don't know which side I'm on.
I know exactly
Oh.
how you feel. So for those of y'all who are not deep in the weeds on campaign finance, again, as a if you were like, I don't know what to do, I want to give it to folks, I want to make sure it gets right in the hands of the candidates. We've got a link that goes right into their hands, split 4 ways. So actually, speaking of resources and diverting resources, Donovan, I want to bring it back to you. We're gonna work this in reverse.
Okay.
As a member of Congress, how would you advocate for federal resource investments back into your district? What's a
Yeah.
project?
So no,
Project.
that's a good question, Brandon. Like the first thing we got to do, no matter what, is overturn HR 1. Because as a state rep now, serving on the appropriations committee, like because of the implementation of HR 1, federal government cutting food assistance, SNAP benefits, as well as people's health care, the state has taken upon themselves, and we fought like hell to make sure people were protected and not as impacted by those cuts. But it impacts our state budget. And so, like I said before, politics is redistribution of resources. So when you have to spend money protecting people's health care and food assistance, that means it diverts funding from other things like our schools, like our roads, like our infrastructure, things of that nature. So federally, we got to overturn HR 1, but more importantly, we got to make sure we stop sending money for wars and redivert those dollars back home for things that people care about and absolutely need, which is housing, food assistance, healthcare. I mean, you name it. So that's the fight right now. But we need a coalition. I can't do it by myself, Brandon, and everybody on this call. But that's why this is a bigger movement, a national movement, and people are waking up and realizing their voices. But in order to utilize your voice, you got to go vote, and that's the whole point of all of this, man. We got to get people out to vote.
Thanks for that, Donovan. How about you, Diop? How would you bring money back to your community?
Well, absolutely. We can reprioritize where we're already wasting funds, but every member of Congress can access this. It's called congressionally directed spending. Every member of Congress has this pot of money that can go straight into their district, and it's a part of the annual budgeting process. But commonly, Republicans will say, "Oh, we don't want to, spend that money, spending taxpayer dollars. That's unethical." That's what my member of Congress says, Bill Huizenga. But that's what I used to work on every single day with Sherrod Brown. And that's how we brought together communities, liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican, inside, outside of that. Folks were coming to requests, we work on special projects back home, and I was able to revitalize communities. And so there's, a project in South Haven in my district, where we had some generous donors donate an old Philposh, or folks who aren't old enough to remember that, the family fair, basically, and turned it into a super senior center, where you had prescription stations, art studios, tech labs, pickleball courts, and we took what we already had and repurposed it for what we need now. And if we're able to tap into congressionally directed spending, we can do projects like that, across all of our districts. And we just need members of Congress that actually care about our communities and are going to tap into those resources.
Thanks for that. Kyle, how about you?
Man, we're spread out in this district big time. I can't drive 20 minutes in any direction and maintain cell and internet signal. We don't have rural broadband. My general belief is that we need to stop waiting for all of these private utility companies to build and expand their monopolies when it's beneficial to them. When my neighbors are going out without any kind of connection to the rest of the world. My belief is generally that the function of government should be that if a human being needs it, it's the responsibility of the federal government to provide it. And that if a public dollar goes in, then public ownership should come out of that. When I look at both the lack of cell towers in our district and cell connectivity, the expansion or the lack of expansion of rural broadband, or even something like watching as so many of our rural hospitals fall offline, I believe that it should be the function of the federal government to start to fill those gaps, those rural service gaps, and fill them with publicly owned and operated telecommunications entities that can either compete or at least impel any number of these other privately owned companies to fill into those areas. Same thing with our rural broadband. Same thing with these publicly owned and operated clinics that could come in and fill those gaps so that people don't end up doubling their distance to care. Right now, we have these private health insurance or these private healthcare systems that will buy up something like 5, 6 nodes of care, take half of them offline because they look at us as customers and they figure we've monopolized the entire region. We'll just send those customers further to the other clinics that we own. Forget that. If at some point a private company decides that my neighbor's care is not profitable for them and they want to exit that market, goodbye. And we will fill that with a need, but with publicly owned and operated clinics. Same thing with driving up our utility costs. Right now, DTE has a monopoly in so much of our state, driving up our bills, keeping us dependent on fossil fuels. My feeling is this: we can start to put Americans to work in their own district, building green energy infrastructure, and then that green energy infrastructure becomes a public utility. Is now competing with DTE to not only break our dependence on fossil fuels, but also making sure that we can compete with them and lower utility rates.
Nice. Thank you so much. Aisha, same question.
Thank you, Brandon. So the one thing that we need to do is not to invest our taxpayer dollars into genociding children and being involved in illegal wars overseas. That money should be spent here in our communities and invested in infrastructure, education, healthcare. Once again, as I stated before, I fully support Medicare for all. I would fight for it like hell because our communities need it. Look, the issue that so many community members are facing right now is that everything, the affordability crisis is on everyone's mind. That's the number one issue. And how do we tackle that? One is we make sure that we tax corporations, we tax the ultra wealthy. We make sure that they pay their fair share. The second thing is you bring, as Kyle stated, good paying union green jobs into our districts throughout Michigan. And then we also make sure that people have health care. They have Medicare for all. They have universal child care. So many women are forced to stay out of the workforce simply because childcare is way too expensive. So it's not just one thing. I think the whole system needs to be changed. We just have to make things a lot easier for everyday Americans. And right now I'm watching working families struggle. And we have to
Thanks.
do better.
Yep, totally got to make sure we do better, and we got to fight for working families.
Yeah.
One way that you all across the state have talked about fighting for working families and putting the needs of our communities up above and in front of corporations is calling on a data center moratorium.
Yeah.
Each of y'all have called for that moratorium, pausing the development of new data centers. During that pause, what do you hope to accomplish with what do you hope to accomplish? And what questions need to be answered before more of these projects move forward? Aisha, would love to start with you with this.
So to be very frank with you, am fully opposed to AI data centers. We in Michigan, we have 20% of the world's surface fresh water. Why would we allow Silicon Valley to come in here and wreak havoc on our ecosystem, destroy our Great Lakes? So I fully would be opposed to AI data centers. But I think the first issue for me, and the one thing that I would like to know, is how does this impact our communities? How does it impact the health of our communities, our ecosystem, our Great Lakes? And so for me, it would be the environmental and health risks associated with AI data centers, not to mention the surveillance, which we don't associate as much with AI data centers as we should as well.
Thanks for that. Kyle?
And I'm going to be right with Aisha on this one. Really, my principal responsibility is to make sure that we're taking care of the people that live here and make sure that we're protecting this environment for the future. Right now, we're seeing how data centers are invading our communities, overriding local control. That whether you vote for Democrats or Republicans, that everybody's standing up against these damn things. We are supposed to believe that we have to build at this reckless rate because we're in an arms race over AI with China. Same time, I'm looking over and I'm saying, hey, we have 12 times the number of data centers here in America than China has. So if either we lost because we can't do it efficiently, or we won, but one way or the other, we're not going to mortgage our future here in northern Michigan to do that. Now, in saying that, my principal concerns are this: making sure that we preserve local control, making sure that we make sure that there isn't poisoning our environment, that that we're protecting the American workforce. That we've seen over the last 50, 60 years as our increase of productivity has enriched billionaires. I mean, when I look at our increased productivity that is going parabolic with every new advancement in technology and our flat wages, the distances between those lines, that's how I define the billionaire class and now the trillionaire class. That is our excess labor value that they're stealing from us. If we're going to have another advancement in the productivity of the American working class, I want to make sure that we're taken care of. I want to make sure that more of us are working less and getting paid more rather than the opposite. I want to make sure that it can't lay us off by the tens of thousands and make the American working class obsolete. I want to make sure we get that Star Trek future. But first and foremost, my concern is closing the floodgates that are wide open right now as they're coming in and doing to all of us what they did to Saline Township.
Thanks for that. Diop, what about you?
Yeah, in my race, there could be no more stark contrast than between myself and my primary opponent, State Senator Sean McCann. The data center tax break bill that went through, or that is going through 2050, went straight through his committee as the Energy Committee chairman. He supported it, takes money from DTE consumers and rubber stamps their policies. Meanwhile, I'm going to stand up for communities fight for a national moratorium for at least 1 year, that allows us to catch up and write the rules of the road that meet this moment. Because we can stop the development of data centers, but we still need to ensure that our laws can address the incoming threat of AI. And so we need to deal with consumer protections, ensuring that our data is, protected, held private from tech oligarchs. We need to ensure that our land, our air, and our water are safe for the next 7 generations. And we got to put down consumer protections to ensure that, to ensure, or labor protections, I meant, to ensure that humans have a place in the workforce. Things like, fighting for the Railway Safety Act and ensuring that there are 2 men crew on locomotives, ensuring there's a human behind the wheel of a semi truck, and that there's somebody to greet you at the end of a checkout line when you go to get groceries. Because right now we're seeing just right outside of my district in Dowagiac, where there's a data center. They've purchased 145 humanoid robots, and they've already rolled out over 30 of them. And if we've got State Senator Sean McCann supporting tax breaks, impeding our ability to collect revenue at the local level, we got robots then work in these data centers. So we're not getting the jobs. Then who do these data centers really work for? So that's why we need the moratorium, to ensure that we have this tool of technology able to use for the people. Because I'm sick and tired of the story being told to us that AI is Terminator. It's Skynet coming for us all. Well, how about we reimagine it? What if it's Iron Man? What if we think of AI as Jarvis, something that we can use to help us combat the climate crisis, to help solve or cure cancers? But let's not, have just the one version of this being what, Sam Altman or Larry Ellison, projects to us. Let's actually be community members. Let's seize this tool for the people, and let's use it to solve humanity's problems.
Thanks so much for that. I think Donovan stepped away. So in the meantime, what we'll love to be able to do is shift gears. I'm gonna start back with you, on the app and talk about corporate influence. So you started there. You made the point around, making sure we're putting communities first and we're not in the pockets of DTE and consumers. And then, frankly, everybody on this panel has been, running as candidates who put people ahead of corporate interests. Beyond rejecting PAC money, what is one reform you would champion, to reduce the influence of money in politics?
Well, first off, we can start off by not taking corporate PAC money now, which we're all, committed to do. But I think, fighting for independent redistricting commissions, ensuring that that's a nationwide standard, ensuring that we have, swingier districts to where you can't have just a pot of money come in and influence elections. The people actually have to do the work. Candidates actually have to relate to their voters. And we're seeing it in my district. I'm up against the establishment, who's backed by, corporations, backed by, the governor, sitting U.S. senators, and yet the people are making a different decision. And that's because Michigan has independent redistricting commissions. And it allows all of us on this call to have a fair fight in our own district. So fighting for that outside of not taking corporate PAC money can help level the playing field.
Nice. Thank you so much. Kyle.
Sorry, my big fingers keep hitting the wrong button. uh, I'm with Diop on this one. I obviously we all are not going to take it. My feeling is the only way that that your politician isn't bought is knowing that they're not for sale. Making sure that we can actually overturn Citizens United with a constitutional amendment, that we can do pretty much everything between where we're at right now and where we need to go to add transparency and limitation to the power of money on our government. I see a lot of promise in what Hawaii is doing through their legislative process. I see a lot of promise in what I think it was Montana is going through in terms of a ballot initiative. We need to probably start peeling away at this at a state level, to whatever extent we have. I mean, we really need to use every conceivable lever because we see it right now. The corruption that's happening in our government, it bleeds across the aisle. And honestly, the worst effects of Citizens United aren't because they allow Republicans to outcompete Democrats in purple districts is what we see in these deep blue districts. The things that we see when we're looking at Diop's race or Donovan's race in Detroit is what we see when we're looking in Illinois or California or New York City. It's how they will pump millions and millions of dollars into these deep blue primaries to make sure that that person's bought. And then we're surprised when they get to Congress and we see them voting to pass a National Defense Authorization Act that ties us to Israel permanently through our combined military efforts. When we look at the DHS funding that passes, it passes the House because there's 7 defectors from the Democratic Party, goes back to the Senate, bounces back to us. 20 some odd Republicans vote against that bill on principle of all goddamn things. And then, what happens? Now all of a sudden we found 24 Democrats that are all for the damn thing. And so we understand that the fix is in, and the fix is inside the House. It's coming from inside the Democratic Party. And just like we're all seeing, they will mobilize harder against the left, harder against progressives, against working people than they ever move against the Republican Party. We're seeing it in our race, we're seeing it in Diop's, we're seeing it in Donovan's race, we're seeing it in Aisha's race. That's how it works, man. They don't want us to have the levers of power because they know what we're going to do with it, and it's going to mess with the bag.
Right on. Appreciate you for that, Kyle. Aisha, how about you?
So we need to overturn Citizens United. That's one thing that we need to do. Hopefully we all win and we can fight for that. Look, the idea that corporations and APAC and utility PACs and special interest groups get to determine our elections is absolutely disheartening. It's alarming. The reason so many people feel that the Democrats aren't doing enough or the Republicans aren't doing enough is because both are beholden to corporate PACs. Both are beholden to APAC. Um, I mean, one of the individuals I'm running against is taking money from APAC. He's endorsed by DMFI. And, you know, he was caught on hot mic saying that he's running mainly to make sure that the United States continues to support Israel. I think that we need more folks and public servants and representatives who want to fight on behalf of working families and will put the needs of the American people, the needs of Michiganders, the needs of working families first. And I think until that happens, things are not going to change. So I will never take money from corporate PACs. I'm never going to take money from APAC. I'm not going to sell my soul and pretend to be a public servant and pretend to care about the community um, am hoping to serve if I'm just going to be beholden to these corporate interests and special interest groups. So overturning Citizens United, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, thank you. I think, definitely making sure that we're overturning and fighting against Citizens United, but also it's been in the chat that locally here in Michigan, we've got an opportunity to do that through the Mop Up Michigan ballot initiative. So more opportunities for regulation, more opportunities to be able to rein in some of these corporate influences, both at the state and the federal level. Because, you're right, as somebody who's here in Michigan, in Detroit, we are seeing the crypto money, the APAC money, now the big pharma money, all flooding into this race, for the opportunity to have someone that's bought and paid for. So, continue to have fighters that are both ensuing and pushing back against the corporate money, but also looking to figure out ways to reel it in. One more question I want to just ask before we start going to our close and then open it up for to take some of the feedback in the comments. But immigration and the and sort of the march against immigration that we've seen from our federal administration. So, one question that I have, and we'll start with you, Aisha, since you mentioned this is a part of your background, is how would you work to build a bipartisan and institutional coalition necessary to hold accountable, our federal public officials and agents who are violating the law against our immigrant brothers and sisters?
So I say this as an immigrant. Um, I will collaborate with anyone who wants to help working families, our communities, but I will not bend my knee to fascism. I refuse to do that. And what we're watching take place in our country is authoritarianism taking root here. We're watching American citizens, I've said it before, I'll say it again. We're watching American citizens being shot in the face. We are watching immigrants being killed simply for existing. We are watching people who are following the proper pathway to gaining citizenship being killed in broad daylight with their 3-year-old child watching in horror. We're watching children and men and women being sexually violated, once again, by this paramilitary force that is doing its bidding on behest of the President of the United States of America. We have to make it possible for folks who have been here for a while, dreamers, to have a legal pathway to citizenship. We need to make people feel safe in their homes, in their communities. I had a lot of conversations with folks in Pontiac, and there are families that have been separated because of ICE. There are young people, children who are having to work, just so their mother can pay their bills. And that's absolutely just horrific. As I've stated before, I'm an attorney. I've worked as a prosecutor, and I don't believe anyone is above the law. I don't care if it's the president of the United States of America. I don't care if it's an ICE agent. I don't care if it's a police officer. If you do something that is improper, if you take a life, then you should be held accountable. And I will work with whoever I need to work with to make sure that folks who are breaking the law, whether or not they're in positions of power, are held accountable. And, immigrants, as an immigrant, I remember what America meant to me in 1993 when my sister and I we came to this country as children and saw the Statue of Liberty, saw the big yellow taxis, and I remember what America meant to me. I remember the hope that I felt in my heart, and I don't like what the current administration has turned our country into, and I will actively fight against it.
Thanks so much. I'm gonna pass it to you, Kyle.
You know, I look at the way that we approach immigration in this country, and I can't help but think that the Democratic Party owns a big share of that. That we can just message properly on immigration, that we can just say, we can stop capitulating in advance, stop allowing the right wing to lay out the battlefield we get slaughtered in, by allowing them to make us believe that somebody who just penetrates this invisible membrane that is our border is suddenly a criminal or a rapist or a murderer by default, when all of the data coming out of the Trump administration, for God's sakes, shows that immigrants commit crime at a far lesser rate than US born citizens. I'm tired of believing that they're a net drain on our economy when the Cato Institute, which is a right wing think tank, puts together a 30-year study that shows that all 30 years of that study showed that undocumented immigrants provided a net tax surplus to this country. And if it wasn't for that net tax surplus, we would literally have a 50% higher national debt. National debt, the thing that right wingers are supposed to care about more than anything in the world, including human life. And then I'm looking at how they're supposed to be taking American jobs. But whenever ICE comes to a community to brutalize our neighbors, all of a sudden the construction industry and the agricultural industry falls apart because we need those people. What we don't need is for them to be second class citizens that are under the boot heel of the American government and subject to capricious violence from some political force that's coming out in ICE. I really genuinely believe that we could have amnesty for so many people in this country and be so much better off. We don't need this militarized security theater. I'll work with whoever to get whatever we need, but I know that Republicans like my incumbent opponent Jack Bergman, he's up here and supposedly from the Upper Peninsula. We all understand he's a carpetbagger who's got a two-route road out in Waters Meet that barely has running water, and he's from Louisiana, but he talks about the southern border. Man, you are as far from the southern border as anybody's going to get. Nobody's swimming the Sioux locks to come and brutalize our families or steal from us or anything else like that. We can just message properly on immigration. We can stop having this extension of qualified immunity that has now moved into this federal agency that can come in and murder us with impunity. It's ridiculous. Let's go back to a humane immigration policy that actually has a sound and reliable pathway to citizenship. So we're not pulling the road out from underneath these people when they're halfway through it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, what about you? How do you plan to build a coalition to be able to protect our immigrant brothers and sisters?
So when we saw in Minnesota with the onslaught to the communities there, we saw that Native Americans were being picked up and detained in ICE facilities. We also saw in Arizona that folks' license plate or identification cards were being questioned and or not accepted. So if we've got indigenous peoples also being put in immigration camps, then that leads me to believe we've got to show solidarity like we've never seen before. So it doesn't matter if you're immigrant or not. We need to lock arms in this moment and fight together. And that means, fighting for the abolishment of ICE. This is not something we've had, for the entirety of our American government. It's something we just rushed into place after 9/11. I was a second grader. I remember, having the TV wheeled in, and understandably, we were very scared after that. After that day, I thought that every building I went into, a plane was going to hit it. But at the same time, that does not mean that our government should have put together some warrantless surveillance state to monitor its citizens and to punish immigrants. And so I'd say let's move the rest of DHS into the Department of Justice to ensure that there's due process with immigration proceedings, to ensure that there are actually proper warrants being administered, to ensure that there are actual judges being hired. Right now, immigration judges can just be folks who have a bunch of connections. They don't need to be an actual judge. And so if we were able to take a hold of some of these reforms, we would actually have a system that works. I worked on Capitol Hill and met with constituents who were bleeding heart liberals as well as diehard conservatives, folks who were activists and business owners that came together to find solutions for comprehensive immigration reform. Because folks understand, especially in my district, the rural areas, that we need immigrants to help to power our businesses, to help work our communities. And we see higher prices if we don't have everyone included into our communities. And so being able to work on Capitol Hill and find those conservative members that agree, that are like-minded. Granted, we're going to have to get rid of Trump in all of this. I was working there during the time when Trump actually pulled the rug from underneath us. We had a bill in which we had bipartisan consensus, and then the bill died via a tweet or a truth. And so we've got to deal with that problem before we can actually sign bills into law. But that doesn't mean we can't find people who also understand their district and work to build a 218 plus consensus to get these bills across the line.
Awesome. Thanks so much, y'all, for this. Um, I think what just the next step, maybe we should just talk about like one, thanking everybody, who's come, who's got a chance to be on this call with us tonight, talk about a different vision for this country, but also a different vision for this state. And then, for every person who may have never knocked the door or may have never donated to a campaign before, what is one action that they can take after this, joining us tonight? What's one thing that you would encourage them to do? And so, yeah, we're going to start with you.
You can door knock, you can call, you can text, but really I would encourage people to think about what is that thing you're good at that you think could build or bring people into this movement to fight fascism. Are you a dope musician and you can bring people in via music? Are you an amazing artist that can bring people in via your artwork? Whatever that is, employ that on a political campaign to help a ballot initiative. And that's the way we'll get through this. And right now, people are down and the traditional methods don't work. So we're calling on everyone. We've been doing, some different things, some radical things, but it's going to continue. It's only going to continue that way if we have other folks that are thinking that way. So it's really, what is that thing that you're really good at that you think can aid to this movement.
Thanks so much, Kyle.
I'll do the usual. I'll say that knock doors for your candidate if you're in district. If you're out of district, we'll take your time and talent on our phone banks, especially with a district like mine. Knocking doors works in some communities. Other communities, it's quarter mile between doors, so you got to make sure that you're reaching people exactly where they are. And so, however, we're able to supplement our bandwidth on our phone banks, that way we can reach everybody from Traverse City, where it's easier to get to Ontonagon or Elger County or anywhere else. We got 36 counties in our district. It's massive. It's a behemoth. And a lot of the times people feel isolated. Wherever you are and able to meet these people, it helps. But I'll echo what Diop said. Really understanding that this electoral process, especially at the federal level, it's unreliable, it's corrupted. Make sure that you are still dedicating your time between those voting cycles, between the Augusts and the Novembers of the world, and making sure that you're still participating in your community. We need to make it resilient against the rising tide of fascism right now. We need to be able to start to tear down this partisanship and start to build community again. All this other stuff, it's all make believe, right? When we turn on Fox News or when we turn on CNN and we start to look at our neighbor as our enemy, all of that is make believe. Please just start to talk to your neighbors again and start to meet their needs, and they're going to meet your needs, because it is in human nature to cooperate, to work together. We're social creatures. Don't let them drive us inward. Start to build your communities and start to maybe step forward for local government, be on a local board, run for city council, run for county board meeting, because at some point all of this stuff, it needs to penetrate every single level of government. And I thank everybody for participating here, and thanks for the invite.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kyle. Aisha, what's one thing you encourage people to do after leaving this call today?
Um, you know, what we really need help with is door knocking. Most candidates need help with door knocking. If you could go out and do that, that would be amazing. The second thing is um, phone banking, as Diop and Kyle stated. That's really helpful as well. And the third thing is spreading the word. I hear from so many young people, they're like 18, 19, they're like, we told our mom and dad to vote for you. That's amazing. That's what we need more of. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your aunts, tell your neighbors, tell everyone you know. If you believe in a candidate and you support their vision, help them achieve it, because this is not something that one person can do alone. There's a reason that, President Obama's victory was called a movement, because we had an incredibly charismatic individual, uh, a star really, but we had people who believed in his vision and who helped him achieve it. And I think that every single leader, representative needs the support of their community members. We cannot do any of this alone. And so if you have some time to do some door knocking, please do that. If you have some money and can make a contribution to campaigns you care about, please do that. But continue to have conversations with your friends and family, and know that voting matters, and our voice matters, and your voice matters.
Awesome. Thanks for that. And I think one thing, if I can just, bump for y'all is money. We're going against the full-throated force of capitalist America. We're going against all the corporations. And so, money. Now, we'll never have enough to be able to go dollar for dollar, band for band against big pharma, against the crypto, lobby, against you name it. But, sometimes David wins. And so that's the point that we need to be able to like hammer home. And we actually need, dollars if you can, for water, for mail, for rubber bands to wrap our literature around. So if you have anything that you can provide and support, between now and the primary and afterward, please support, each of the campaigns and their volunteers. Emphasis on volunteers. The people who are volunteering need that support. So this is my volunteer time in my capacity. So just want to make sure I'm saying that, wearing that hat. So we're going to wrap, and I know there's a little bit of time for us to do maybe taking some of the comments in the chat. Is that right, Amir? Or?
Yeah. First, I just want to thank everyone for being here. There were some questions in the chat. I think some of the candidates do have to leave. Some of them have some hard stops. Some were gracious enough to give us some extra time. So what I want to do is for those who have to go, if they have any other closing words that they can say those really quick. And then for those who can stick around, we'll kind of take a couple more of these questions and then we'll wrap the entire thing. So Aisha
Thank
will give it.
Thank you, Amir. I do have to leave because I have some people waiting for me in the office. But thank you so much for this opportunity. And the only thing that I want to say is, look, we absolutely can win this. We're watching democratic socialists and progressives winning all over the country. Money is not the only determining factor when with respect to victories. I think we just need our community members to have our back and we can win this. And I think right now it is a war between those of us who are trying to fight for working families versus those who are fighting and doing the bidding of corporate interests and APAC. And so that's why we really need our community to come through and support us. And that's how we win. We cannot do this alone. And I appreciate you all for having me. Thank you so very much. But I do have to go inside now. But yeah, I pray that we all win so we can bring some change because it's time. It's time. So thank you so much. Have a great day.
All right.
Unfortunately, I'm going to have to dip too. I have a town hall that's starting to gather here in a few minutes, so I got to go touch base with everybody there. I really do appreciate the invitation. I appreciate the questions. I appreciate the conversation. I love hearing from the other candidates. I mean, one thing that I always hear all the time is, "Hey, man, the consensus of our government is around this thing. The consensus of the government is always going to default, or the tie always goes to business. It's always going to, it's never going to follow our agenda. You're never going to be able to accomplish anything if you don't fit in, if you're a square peg in a round hole." But I can tell you this much. I'm looking at here in Michigan. We could find our way on the other side of this primary and on the other side of November, and we could have 8 Medicare for all votes just coming from the state of Michigan. And that's doing the damn thing. That's what it looks like. And I'll tell you what we saw out in New York City is this. Everybody told Zoran he was not going to be able to accomplish his agenda because Albany was going to stop him and all these things. But then when Zoran got in and he had a mandate, nobody said shit. Everybody got in line because guess what? We don't have to replace all of them. We just need to replace enough of them that they hear the music stop. And that's where we're going to do. We're going to get this thing done, and we're feeling really excellent here in Northern Michigan. I wish everybody luck in their races. Diop, Donovan, Aisha, Will, Abdul, like we're going to get this thing done. And I'm really feeling confident. So thank you all for joining us here tonight. Donate your time, talent, and treasure. See you on the other side.
Awesome. Yeah. Closing words.
Absolutely. So you obviously we're all up against the establishment in our own primaries, but really my biggest competitors have been the other candidates on this call. Like I've gotten so many people are like, "Oh my God, you see Kyle's video. Why don't you do something like that?" I'm like, I don't have the UP accent. I don't say oot. I don't say a. Like, and oh, you see Aisha over there. Why don't you talk? I'm like, she has something going on that okay, I'll try that. But it's just been so cool to see, these other candidates running campaigns in new engaging ways, and for us to be able to do that here down in Southwest Michigan, and just know that changes in the air. We don't have to accept what the establishment brings from up on yonder. The people can make their own decision. And even though I'm in this race, with the governor endorsing on the other side, going up against both sitting U.S. senators, the Secretary of State, multiple state House members, the people aren't listening to that. They want something different. They know that bought up politicians aren't going to create change that they need in their own communities, and so we're creating that change on our own. So I've built this campaign, this movement, but there's so many people in the community that have already been doing the work and are aiding on to what we're doing, and that's what makes these other campaigns possible. And so at the Senate level, we're seeing corporate money flood in, APAC money flood in, and we're dealing with that same reality in each one of our congressional districts. And so it's upon us in these districts to step up. Are we going to meet that moment? You know, we've got 5 different Mamdanis in Michigan, and so we really have a chance to shine here. And August 4th is that moment where we get to let the rest of the world know where Michigan stands. So I thank you all for being a part of this. Thank you for joining, Brandon. Thank you to the other candidates for hopping on, and thank you to each and every one of you for the work that you do and the work going forward.
All right. Thanks so much, y'all. And we got before you leave, if you can't see, there's a competition. If you can, donate. It gets split 4 ways across these campaigns. So thanks so much, y'all. We dropped the link. The link is dropped again. Thanks so much, y'all. Have a good night.
Thank you guys so much. This has been amazing. This has been recorded, so we're gonna send this out to all the candidates, and then we'll post it on their socials. I'm sure they'll post it on theirs. We're gonna post it on Diop's, so you'll have a chance to revisit this and listen back, and hear what all the candidates have to say. The Act Blue link will stay pretty much until the primary. I mean, to the primary, and then assuming these candidates all make it, which I hope they do. We'll keep it going until the general because, again, we've got 2 fights ahead of us. One is obviously one that's happening in 12 days, and then the rest that will be happening in a couple of months. And so every mile matters. It's crunch time, as we say on the Diop side. There's a whole lot we got to get going and we got to get done. So please make sure that you find the link, and I'll repin it really quick. This link has both the Act Blue for donations and the link for volunteering. So please make sure that you sign up to assist any of these candidates or all of these candidates with phone banking, door knocking, friend banking, the whole nine. Make sure you share their socials, follow them on social media, and then of course donate what you can because every bit of this matters a whole lot. So thank you guys so much. I'm going to keep this up until 5:45, so about 4 minutes to make sure everybody gets access to that link, and then I will close this out for good. Thank you guys so much. If you have any other questions or comments, please feel free to add them. I will compile them and send them specifically to all of the candidates. If you had the questions for each